one of the best leadership behaviors I've ever seen. There was a team I was on at the time, just got a new supervisor. Supervisor came in and sat down and just connected to nothing. Just said, hey, just as a forewarning, I'm going to ask about one dumb question a day because I'm just trying to figure all this stuff out. And I thought it was just a wonderful example of what a good leader does, is just acknowledge the fact that I'm not perfect.
Yeah.
But what it does for a team is that it's so disarming because now I'm releasing you from feeling the need to be perfect for me.
Welcome to the Culture Stoke podcast, where happier people lead to better results.
Howdy.
Oh, good morning.
Good morning. Episode 4, boys. We made it.
Good day.
Good day. Yes, it is still
Happy Blur's Day.
Happy Blur's Day. All right. Well, we have hit episode 4 officially of the Culture Stoke podcast. How do you guys, I mean, as the founders, 8 years ago, you set out to do this thing, and now you're doing a podcast with your co-founder. How do you feel?
I feel very excited and scared. This is very uncertain, uncharted territory. And it's a wild adventure knowing that we have a clear direction of where things could go and where we like them to go. But also I would want to release some of that expectation and just live a bit frugally on surprise. See what happens.
Live frugally on surprise.
Wow. Only Marty
I love
would
that
say
so
that,
much.
and I love it. So it's what makes Marty the best.
I love it.
Live frugally on surprise.
Heck yeah.
Wow. What about you, bud? How are you feeling about this?
I will tell you that this is while it is skill building uncharted territory for me, I struggle terribly with imposter syndrome. When I was writing, as I'm writing my book, it was one of the things that frustrated my publisher so much because they were like, why should people want to listen to you or read your book? And I'm like, I don't know that they should.
No.
And then when the idea of doing a podcast came up, it was very much like, what, does every person with an opinion need a podcast? Because it feels like that's like the starter kit for everyone. It's just get a podcast and a platform. But here's the thing. I've worked very hard to get to where I'm at. I've been supported and uplifted by wonderful, amazing people. And I do think that the things that I have to say and the ways that I think are important enough to share. And so I'm just diving in head first, and I'm going to live frugally on surprise.
Yeah,
too.
live frugally on surprise. I love it
so much.
Well, I mean, you guys certainly, and I think you're right. It's funny, everyone starts a podcast, but I think at the end of the day, what's so great about this is that you guys have helped countless leaders, organizations, people. And so it's not even like a feather in the cap of, wow, look, it really is just me being kind of the new guy in the room, the newbie to at least how you guys do things is really, it's such a valuable thing that you guys have to offer. And it's easy for you guys to be subjective and, oh, well, I wonder, but at the end of the day, even me sitting here, like I'm learning, I'm seeing things differently. And so I know people listening are just going to love it. Keep loving it. Now, enough of the feather. Get out. Yeah. Hey, last time we talked about the employee-employer relationship. That was fun.
That was fun.
That was good.
It's a good one.
I think we said more than once. So the whole moral of the story is just be a human. I mean,
I genuinely believe it is, even me in a leadership position very early on, I felt I needed to be someone completely different than myself.
Yeah.
That in order to get the best results, in order to help people do the right things rightly, that I needed to put on a very different veneer of professionalism. I needed to treat people differently. I needed to focus purely on the business side of business. And that actually was quite a heavy detriment. I recall one of the most difficult lessons I learned was going into a performance review for a team member who had been with the company for a number of years and to previous standards have been performing well. In my opinion, I saw there was room for improvement. And so instead of talking about the things that this individual had done well and done right over the years, I started to focus on the things that could be improved and led with that. And so very much where I have my own tendency to feel these little criticisms and dwell on the things that don't go as well as they could be, I realized more oftentimes than not, as a young manager and leader, we have a tendency to very much focus and kind of become hyper aware of the things that aren't going as well as it could be, without looking at the other side of the coin of thinking about, well, this happened 3 times out of 100, but what about the other 97 times when she did this really, really well? And not only did that create a significant amount of tension in terms of that dynamic that existed between that team member, but it also hurt their performance and very much eroded the trust that we had established up to that point.
Jeez.
And so if by looking at the full side of the human spectrum, the person not who's doing the work in addition to the work can help tremendously.
Yeah, that's great. Wes, do you have any kind of like nice Wessyisms?
I don't. One, don't call me Wessy ever again. The interesting thing is the word authentic is one that gets thrown around a lot, and 2, it has a bit of a stigma now, like, oh, what does it mean to be authentic at work? Yeah. And I wonder if there are leaders out there who feel like they are not at liberty to be their whole self, and therefore when they are putting on this mask or this facade at the workplace, it's causing some internal tension, because I think Marty and I will talk oftentimes, like, authenticity is not just like an on-off switch. Like, you can have a knob and you can turn that knob. Like, you can't be cranked to 11 at all times. But there's research out there that I want to say it's like 90% of people feel like they can't be their authentic self at work. And I wonder how much energy and effort is spent in hiding those pieces of ourselves that make us uniquely us. Is that translating to more or less productivity if we're having to spend energy on trying to keep certain parts of ourselves?
Right. There's an expenditure of energy that has nothing to do with the actual work.
Right.
It's like this mental expenditure of like, oh no, I have to be something I'm not.
This is my frustration with the word professionalism, as if how you dress has any bearing on how well you're going to perform. Like, if you're a clown, sure, like you can't. It would be really hard to be an effective clown in a 3-piece business suit, unless you had the face paint on and stuff. Like, the facade, like the allure of a clown is lots of bright colors, and so like I don't know. It's just it's an ever fascinating thing for me when folks are like, well, I really want people to be professional, and it's like, well, what does that even mean?
Yeah.
And
why?
Why
does that matter?
Yeah.
Really, at the end of the day, why does it matter? Yeah. Well, and I think, Marty, I love your kind of vulnerability in that. And, we've all been in a leadership position on a, fairly significant level, whether it's, a calling center or professor, college, the things that you do there. Or just nonprofit world. But I think here's something that we don't want to be. I think, like as Marty said, we have a tendency to get a little hyper focused on the 3 things that happen out of a 97 that are actually good. And yes, we're going to talk about leaders, and we're going to talk about some of the negative outcomes of bad leadership today.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, leadership is so hard. It's a burden. It's a deep, heavy burden. And we never want to come across pejorative or angry at leaders because of the current state of things. No, it just means, guys, we have an opportunity as a society, as leaders, to step up. Because here's the alarming stat. We start with the alarm. 75%, according to Gallup, of employees who voluntarily leave their job do so because of their bosses, not the job itself.
And to that, Yes. If you could think back to some of the jobs that you may have had over the years, and is oftentimes I've worked in pizza places, I've worked in restaurants, I've worked in agencies, I've worked elsewhere, but the work is different. The context of work is different, but the things that really tend to make the job less enjoyable can sometimes be the managerial aspects. It can make a fair job very difficult to go to. It can make a fair job a wonderful place, something that you can look forward to.
Right.
And it's really in that choice in terms of the relationship that exists between leader and, I guess for lack of a better term, follower, or someone who's there to either help you do your best work, or someone there to really take care of themselves above others.
Yeah.
And so I do deeply empathize, because leadership isn't necessarily a topic or it's actually a skill that is oftentimes taught very thoroughly, looking at the human psychology of leadership. And that's, or if you're looking at the tactical business side, that's important. But if you can connect deeper on an emotional level with people, you're going to develop trust, which is going to yield to, well, trust, I believe deeply is like the key to any strong and lasting relationship, but care. And care is what's going to allow people to feel seen, feel appreciated, feel heard. And if those conditions exist within a workplace, people are going to be much more apt to not only perform, but to perform in the manner that aligns with getting the best results.
That's great, man. I mean, I think you guys both, and I think we even talked a little before about, kind of, hey, what are all of our own, if we could prioritize and say there's one thing, that we should touch on as a leader. You guys actually had different answers. So it's actually kind of interesting. Not a bad thing, right? So it's not right, wrong. It's just different.
Yeah.
And the irony is I think I might even have a slightly different take on it. But, you mentioned care as kind of the impetus or the start of great leadership. I mean, if 75% of people are leaving their jobs because of a leader, then that means 75% of people on some level are not caring for their people, or maybe it's just they're not even seeing their people as people. There's that veneer of professionalism. But Wes, you kind of touched on another thing, and I have some thoughts, but you mentioned a different kind of characteristic about leadership that really stands out in your mind.
Well, I mean, the care thing is so important, because it is something that's super absent. And I want to go back on, because I have a very interesting relationship with leadership at large in the workplace, because half of me is so empathetic to the people in leadership positions, because it is the hardest job.
Yeah,
it's the hardest job. To be an effective leader of people is the hardest job. But the other side of me is like, but you asked for it. So if you asked for it, and if you want it, well, don't you have a responsibility to learn and earn it?
Yeah.
If you want to be a leader of people, that means that you have to be worthy of being followed, because that's what makes you a leader, is that there are people who are in your charge. There are people that are in your care, to Marty's point, that should depend on you. And so there is an immense amount of pressure. And so I do want to say, if I ever come across fussy about people in leadership positions, please know that it's because I care about you too. Because I care, because you are holding people's lives in your hand. Like you are the greatest source of joy or other in their life. It is forever fascinating to me how little people think about the influence that they have when people ask them out in the streets or at class reunions or family reunions, like, tell me about your work and tell me about your boss. Like, what's your boss like? They don't realize, like, you have a lot of ability to affect change in that conversation with how you show up, if you're willing to look. And so if I could instill a trait into leaders, it would be humility. Yeah. Because humility is a word we use a lot, that in my opinion is misunderstood and misrepresented. It's not some aw shucks attitude where it's just like, but it's really like the view that I have of others around me. I think of humility as when you look at your people, when you look at people that you encounter, I think fundamentally believing that there's something that every single person in your life has something to teach you.
Yeah.
And being open and willing to that is the bedrock of humility, because the minute that I think I've got it figured out is the minute that I have decided that you are incapable of teaching me anything.
Right.
And it shuts off just a whole wellspring of learning.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, that's
No, I love it. And I think it does kind of speak. You mentioned fussy. I love that word.
my favorite word.
I mean, it's true though. I think we all get kind of passionate about it because we have all stood in that position and failed miserably in our own way. You know,
Yeah.
I remember in leadership, you know, I had about a team of 50 or so people. And the thing that I actually mentioned to you guys the other day was I had a problem with being toxically positive about everything. Nothing could go wrong. We were okay, guys. And then also, which is so funny because you would think, how could anyone be too positive? It's like, well, if someone comes to you and says, hey, like, I'm really having a hard time with this, and you're like, and you're just trying to bait and switch, almost like shift the focus to them.
Emotional dissonance.
Yeah.
You should. I don't know why you're feeling like that,
Yeah,
but
why
you
are
should
you-
feel differently right now. This is great. All things are great.
Because- Right. And you mentioned this the other day, like conflict. I had such a deep problem with conflict that I could not sustain other people's conflict. I had to find a way to shift the focus. And I was just taught that's good leadership. But what started happening is people got disenfranchised. I'm like, I'm the most positive person in the room. What are you talking about? No, I found out people weren't super stoked on my leadership. They were frustrated because I would sweep things under the rug and I wouldn't deal with things. And so I think you touched on something. We actually, ironically, perfect segue. Literally, we wrote out the list, and the first thing you said when we talked about, and this is really practical. Leaders, we love you. We've been there. It's hard. There's a few things we wrote out though that we think are the best places to start. And you wrote starting with yourself. Starting with yourself.
Yeah, I think it goes to the being endlessly curious about yourself.
Yeah.
What are the things that make you tick? And so if you're feeling compelled to show up a particular way for your team, for whatever reason, taking that half a heartbeat or that little bit of time to just say, what's driving that? What's really behind that? What is the thing? Why do I feel the need to do this?
Right.
In whatever situation, if you understand why and you're able to articulate it and you can look at it and go, yeah, this is a good thing, then do that. But don't just do things. You know, don't just throw things out there. Right, Marty?
That's the difference between being intentional and reactionary.
Yeah.
And I believe particularly when it comes to curiosity, not just for yourself, but I think if you're to extrapolate that into the characteristics of strong leadership, curiosity for other people, curiosity about either their performance, their lives, their well-being, that is where you can really start to grow not only curiosity, but connection, care, and other things that are really relevant for great leadership and also to the human side of business. Because if really one of the greatest responsibilities and opportunities as leaders is to help other people become better, whether it's better in their job or even better in their whole complete lives. And I don't think a leader can help somebody grow if they don't care.
Yeah.
And for a recent example, my son was on a soccer team and playing, doing drills during practice one afternoon. And he was getting a little bit frustrated because the coach kept asking him to repeat the drill. He was doing a really great job. And he's like, I'm doing this really well. I don't understand why I keep having to do this over and over. Well, the coach was actually giving him some advice of how he might be able to not only do the drill, but kind of enter in some head fakes or kind of use his body language to improve, which was a bit of a higher skill than maybe some others on the team. And so I could understand his frustration of having to do it over and over as he expressed that to me. And like, you know what? That's actually a good thing. He cares enough to not only see you as you're performing now, but the potential of how you could do things better.
Yeah.
And so even though it may felt weird that he was trying to push you to excel, that doesn't happen if a leader doesn't care.
Yeah.
I had a person in my life who I was sitting in one of his workshops at one time, and he put it this way: if you don't care about your people, you have not earned the right or the privilege to manage their performance. Because I mean, when you think about this word care, right?
Great.
When you think about this word care, it's not, there's a differentiation between care and like. You don't necessarily have to like your person. Like comes with shared interest, and would we want to go and hang out? Do we have something that we can connect on that's part of the... There are people in our life that we care about very deeply that I don't necessarily need to hang out with.
Yeah.
Care comes from, do I have this person's best interest in mind? Do I want them to be successful? Do I want them to be happy and healthy? All those things you can want, but we don't need to hang out.
Yeah.
We don't need to be friends.
Yeah.
And I think that is a interesting distinction to take from a leadership perspective, because if we release ourselves from this, you know, what's the old expression, like, you can't be somebody's boss and their friend. And it's like, well, sure, you shouldn't be. But like, that doesn't mean you can't be friends with somebody who's on your team that's an employer, as long as you have the wherewithal to not show favoritism, because that's the big thing, right? The favoritism thing is like, to protect yourself from that means you got to distance yourself from everyone. Like, for real though,
Right.
There's you know, one of my big things, and you'll hear me say it all the time, is the answer is probably somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
Can you be best friends with everybody on your team? Probably not. Probably
Yeah.
shouldn't.
An unrealistic expectation. Yeah.
You still care about them.
Yeah.
You can still want good things for them. You still want them to be successful, and people can feel that.
Yeah.
Oh, certainly.
Yeah. Yeah.
And to the degree of like, yes, we want you to eat, but maybe not at our table. That's kind of the difference between care and like. And so when it comes to care, that's really, it's a verb. It requires action. And oftentimes, so think about what are some ways that we can care as leaders?
Yeah.
Well, connecting, communicating, asking questions of people. I think that's really starts. So you have to have a connection in order to develop a trust relationship. And before you can even get the trust, you first have to know the person. And then to that degree, like, yeah, maybe not so much like them, but you at least care about them.
Right.
So if you know you, they know they care about you. That's where we can start to plant the seeds of trust. But we can do that by listening, asking, really demonstrating certain aspects of that are managerial in nature, but are more leadership characteristics. And I will say that goes into around inspiring. How do you inspire people? Well, you have to inspire them. You have to kind of give them a reason, not just what's in it for you, but connect kind of their head and the heart about not only where you're going, but how could this be a better future for you? And not just a better future for me as a leader.
Yeah.
Right.
If we achieve these results, I'm going to get a sweet bonus. I'm going to get a sweet bonus, or whatever that looks like. Well, maybe that is true, but how is that also shared amongst your team? There's the inspiration, there's caring, there's listening, sharing, there's elements that have to be, that I don't think a leader can execute if care is absent.
100%. I think the thing to most consider when you're investing in people and investing in relationships, the distinction, the textbook distinction between leadership and management is management manages work. You know, the management and execution of work. That's what needs management. People don't necessarily need management. You manage work. People need leadership. Leadership is, can I inspire? Can I get people to rally and go this way with me? Do people understand the broader context and are able to do that work of connecting to what's in it for them?
Right.
And all of that comes with establishing that relational side of trust. You can't manage yourself into relational trust. You can become dependable. not trustworthy. I think Simon Sinek talks about this a lot, the difference between being dependable and trustworthy. Trust is a feeling, it's an emotion. Dependable just means people can count on you to do a thing. And we mistake those or conflate those too often in leadership positions. But there is a level of consistency that's needed. I will say all the time in leadership, people need consistency. People can deal with a consistently bad boss. We have all been a bad boss at some point in time, and we have all dealt with bad bosses. You can deal with a consistently bad boss. You can thrive under consistently great leadership. Where people struggle is that kind of pendulum swing of like, I'm going to be one way or the other based on a book I read or my natural. And I think it goes back to that authentic talk is like, if you're spending a bunch of time, effort, and energy to be the thing that you think that you should be for people instead of just being who you are, you can only keep that up for so long. But if you lead first with the things that are most important to you, and most importantly, if you lead first with yourself, then you're going to keep yourself out of those pitfalls of like, oh, the facade's cracking a little bit. Oh, I'm not able. Oh, I'm showing up a little bit differently. Now I don't have that bandwidth. Now I don't have to worry about that. And and it's interesting the psychology that's behind this, because if we are spending time pretending to be something that we're not, that is draining our mental and emotional energy on the things that we should be focused on. It's not just this come as you are, you're this perfect product. I think it's even leaning into the things that I'm terrible at. If you try to pretend like you're the best at everything or you're good at everything, you will never be a good leader. Ever.
Well, but the inherent, and I think this is the flip side of that in the workplace, is the expectation of leader is almost unrealistic in that sense. It's that you have to come and you're actually setting the example for the most productive, the most whatever, whatever that business is saying, hey, we value these things. And, to your guys' point, I think we all have walked through something in leadership that's been a challenge, whether it's our own leadership or watching others. And so, but we said a few things in here. I want to touch back on them. So we said starting with yourself. That's kind of a big thing we mentioned. And we keep kind of rolling back into care and how that works. But at the end of the day, there's a reason people aren't showing up, as themselves. And everyone's going to have a little bit, there's going to be a nuance, I suppose, to that. But in your guys' experience, having, done leadership things with different, chamber down here in, this county and stuff like that, is there a common denominator? Are there a few like, hey, when it comes to starting with yourself, here's how not to show up like yourself. You know what I mean? What are the stops that create that in a leader for you guys from your experience?
Well, I think it actually starts a little before. It's like, how did you get in the leadership position to begin with? And more oftentimes than not, leaders find themselves either intentionally or being promoted into a leadership position where they are expected to either lead a team, accomplish a particular task, etc., because they were very skilled and very proficient or very successful in probably doing the thing that they're now going to see.
They're leading.
They're overseeing this team. It's just doing the same thing. And the skills of doing said thing, I'd imagine, are going to be quite different than actually the skills of leadership. And so the difference between doing the thing and then leading people. And so when it comes to what are some of the, apologize, I got off down a rabbit hole.
No, you're good.
Repeat that
Bring it
question,
on,
or maybe Wes,
starting with yourself. No, that was good though. Yeah, I know what you're saying. Yeah, I think. Go ahead.
If you the being and
what was the question again?
what like a couple of things to,
if you're to start with yourself as a leader,
for starting with yourself,
what are the faux pas? What are the things that are causing them not to start with themselves? Because again, here's the thing: we're often not ourselves anywhere we go. And so there's some clear, obvious psychological reasons why we just don't show up as ourselves a lot of the time. But if you're going to do it, and if you're going to take the responsibility of leadership, then there's a burden of I need to, if this is how I'm going to be best leader, I need to start with myself, which means inherently questioning your own whatever. So what are your thoughts, man?
to kind of bring it back to Marty's point of we promote people and we put them in positions where they are in charge of people doing work that they were excellent at.
Yeah.
Without really giving them the skills, knowledge, and abilities of being a leader, because the skills, knowledge, and abilities needed to be a leader of a team versus contributor of a team are fundamentally different.
Yeah,
because
yes,
the first thing about leadership that you have to realize is it's not about you.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're a leader, not about you. No, it's not about you at all.
Yeah.
And so one of the best leadership behaviors I've ever seen, there was a team I was on at the time, just got a new supervisor came in and sat down and just connected to nothing, just said, hey, just as a forewarning, I'm going to ask about one dumb question a day because I'm just trying to figure all this stuff out. And I thought it was just a wonderful example of what a good leader does, is just acknowledge the fact that I'm not perfect.
Yeah.
But what it does for a team is that it's so disarming, because now I'm releasing you from feeling the need to be perfect for me. And so I think one of the leadership traits, if the question is like, what are some of the faux pas, leaders who are not self-aware have a tendency to emulate people that they think were good in leadership positions. So I'm going to copy and paste what you do.
Right.
And the funny thing about that is that when we are being disingenuous, there is something innate to humans where we can pick up on that.
Can kind of tell.
We have kind of a BS radar that we can pick up on. And the funny thing is, particularly if you were promoted from a team into a leadership position, it's like you used to not be, now you're being this way. It's not like you're fooling anybody. Like all of a sudden I got to do this. And so I think this idea of starting with yourself is just owning the fact that you're a person too.
Yeah.
And that people need growth. People need expectations. So all the things that your team needs in order to survive, you need too.
Kind of need it too.
And so being just aware about, where is my energy? Am I feeling appreciated for the work that I do? Have I celebrated some of the things that we've accomplished? Am I taking time to develop myself? Am I feeling recharged and recouped? What is my energy level?
Yeah, where am
Just
I at?
Having the pulse on you so that you can be there for others, I think is just a great way to start with yourself.
Absolutely. And even getting clear about what are the things that you value as a leader and letting your team know what that is, particularly when it comes to either ideal behaviors, the type of results or success that you're looking to achieve, and how, while also at the same time being very clear about maybe what makes you different than maybe a leader who was in that role before. If you're coming into a new team, maybe not right at the offset, but as you get to know, as you get to know and develop your team, because once it's very clear about how you might otherwise operate versus somebody else, there's a consistency point. There's that opportunity to not only, hey, I'm going to show up in a particular way. That consistency is going to build a level of trust. But then now if I have a vision forward of what we want to be able to accomplish, how we can do so, we're going to be able to not only give you the venue to not just receive information kind of as an edict on high, but also have, hey, we want your feedback. We're thinking about doing this. We're soliciting input. We're seeking to understand and being curious. So I think all of these characteristics are really critical to not only developing high performing teams, but to also make leadership less of a burden than what it might otherwise be.
Do you think, I have a question. Do you, because I have thoughts about this, but I'm curious to know, there's the kind of conflicting schools of thought of like, well, I'm a leader, so people should follow me in the things that I need. Or is it, I'm a leader, I need to understand what my team needs in order to be them, to be the leader that they need. And what have you found, or what do you think about like the striking of the balance between the two, where it's not all about me, it's definitely about them, but there's also pieces of me that, as a leader, to your point, Marty, this is what sparked the thought for me. What do I value and what do I expect from my people? But then we say, like, but it's not about you. So how do we reconcile that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely two sides of the same coin. And I think very much it starts with helping, actually inverting kind of the idea of a traditional leadership hierarchy. I think if you're looking at a traditional pyramid leader, sometimes it's at top. If you invert that, the leader is actually the individual there to help enable the next rung up to be able to be supportive of their team. And so if we're looking at a traditional C-suite, it might be looking at like the CEO. It's actually maybe inverted at the bottom, where you now have your C-suite, your chief operations officer, your financial officer, whatever. But then those, you want to be able to provide those individuals with the knowledge, skills, success, confidence to be successful, to be able to help their teams. And so whether it's the marketing team, the finance team, customer service team, all the way then, okay, you have the managers that are then working to empower the individual contributors and allow everyone to be successful.
Yeah.
So really shifting our mindset around kind of where leaders might otherwise traditionally fall or not be placed kind of within an organizational hierarchy is a really keen and interesting way to consider, okay, if my role is really here to set people up for success, let's first think of them in mind.
Right.
What are the key things that are absolutely necessary? What are some things that might be nice to haves, etc.? But then at the same time, know that you have to take care of yourself so you can lead them. I think, Wes, you say it is me first for them. And to that degree, you need to understand what are the areas of your own work life that need some additional support or resources so you can be successful. And maybe that's other people on your team providing accountability, having some mentorship, or maybe even having an outside perspective to be able to help support you, guide you through some otherwise difficult challenges that can be difficult to address with individuals without necessarily undermining the appearance of leadership. And because really, I struggle to even articulate that, because yes, there's that knob of authenticity that, yes, hey, if you're struggling, sometimes it can be very disarming for your team to understand, like, hey, we don't need, like, we're in this together, we're learning together. But there's also a point where, hey, if I say some of the quiet things out loud, is that going to actually undermine the level of trust or confidence that we have to do this thing?
Right.
So to that point of trying to lead yourself, it can get a little sticky when there's conflicting responsibilities at play, and knowing where to adjust and allocate your energy appropriately.
Well, and I think, to your point, if you're approaching leadership relationally, that becomes much easier to manage, that tension, because you're not now wondering, well, I don't know, does Bob trust me? It's like, no, you've actually established a relational dynamic within your team, which is harder inherently, because relationship is arguably one of the hardest things to truly, like, right? We all are, it's hard. Relationships is harder. And which is, I also think, why we've kind of defaulted to just like, well, you listen, top down leadership, listen to me, because it's much easier. Yeah. Ironically, doesn't really render the best results. And so if you can approach it relationally, that tension, although still exists, becomes something that won't break you. You could actually start making some cool stuff out of that.
Not technically.
Yeah,
it's not technically. It is much
technically.
easier to pretend and to just direct traffic than it is to invest. And this is where you have the choice.
Yeah.
You can be an exceptional manager and be a terrible leader.
Yeah.
You can be an exceptional boss.
Yeah.
And be a bad leader if you define the success on the outcomes of the team. This kind of goes back to our culture conversation.
Yeah.
This is the fundamental misunderstanding about what leadership is when it comes to the whole "it's not about you" thing. It's being the leader that my team needs to be, or that my team needs me to be. To what Marty's point is, in order to be successful. You're
Yeah.
there to set them up to be successful. But if you're not setting yourself up to be successful as a leader in all the human ways that we've talked about today, then the likelihood that your team is going to be successful, and also the influence that you have on them and their life, because they're going to look at you and the way that you behave, and they're going to intuit and infer, oh, I've got to be like that. And so
Right.
if you're constantly burning the midnight oil, burning the candle at both ends, not sharing gratitude, only fixated on the task, not investing in relational energy, guess what everyone else is going to do? Follow the leader.
Yeah.
This is the important part about leadership and knowing yourself first is like, it sounds simple to say, but just releasing ourselves from feeling the need to be anything but human.
Right.
You're a person.
Yeah.
You put your pants on the same way that everyone puts their pants on. The only thing that makes you unique is that you're not only responsible for yourself anymore.
Right.
Now you're responsible for a collection of people who are going to look to you when times get hard, who are going to look to you for encouragement, who are going to look to you for clarifying directions. They're going to look to you for guidance. They're going to look to you if you've invested in the relational piggy bank. They're going to look to you for mentorship. They're going to look to you for guidance. And so if you want a quick and easy kind of litmus test about how's my relational piggy bank with your people, when was the last time that somebody came and talked to you about something other than work?
Dude, I love that point, Wes. And I think we've kind of talked a lot about leadership philosophy, where and how, faux pas, fussiness, all those fun things. But let's get really practical. Let's kind of break down. We've actually already touched on some of these topics, but I want to get really, really practical for those who are watching, listening, wondering, okay, great. Yeah, I get it. I need to start myself. I need to do all these things. What are actionable to-dos that, hey, if you start doing these things as a leader, you're just going to have better results, And I think inherently they have to start with themselves. But Marty, you wrote out 4 C's, and we've already actually touched on like 3 of these, but we're going to bring them in order. We're going to kind of bring them in order, and we're going to start asking. I'm just going to ask you guys, quick questions. Hey, what's a practical way we could do this? So the first C that we have is curiosity. So this is Marty's practical practices to improve relationships with people. That's the tagline. So curiosity, number 1. Yes. So Marty, what does that mean quickly? And then what are very practical ways that you guys have seen that manifest for the good of a team or a leader?
Yeah, absolutely. So when it comes to curiosity, very much leaning into the fact that any assumption that you might have, any judgment that you might have around a particular person, a situation, or etc., may not be accurate, and that is okay. But in order to really know, you need to ask. And so curiosity tends to start with inquiry. So what are some of the things that you can do to be curious? 1, look for opportunities to ask questions. And asking questions as open-ended and as broad as possible can oftentimes give you a nice entry point into different paths of conversation and really getting to know somebody on a deeper level than just the work that they do.
Yeah.
So start there.
That's great. Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I always like to set up teams with about me stuff. So if you have a team that's relatively new together, just rotate every week until you get through every team member. And then every time you onboard a new team member, they have to give a 5-minute presentation about them.
Oh.
And the only rule is can't be work related.
Ooh.
So just what are your hobbies, and so they'll go in and they'll share parts, because it's about establishing connection.
Yeah.
And we can connect over work, sort of. We'll have some shared experience, but connection really comes with the things that are more important to us in our lives.
Right.
And so just establishing a rhythm of having about me presentations for everybody to step in and say, let me just talk about me, not work related, for 5 minutes is great. Yeah. Once you get past that, open up with just interesting check-in questions. And it can be as simple as, tell us something about you that would be surprising.
Yeah.
Tell us something about you that we don't know.
Yeah.
Tell us, and just opening up with that versus how was the weekend?
How you doing?
Oh, it's pretty good.
Good.
Okay,
good.
being the curiosity is being curious about what stands behind the person.
Mm.
And so I just like to give people platforms to talk about things that are other than work at work.
Yeah.
Because it allows them to share in a comfortably vulnerable way glimpses of themselves that maybe that they wouldn't do it.
That's fantastic. I love that.
And absolutely echo the sentiment around getting to know you form. That's something that we did at Advantage as part of the onboarding process. And it was I think there may have been one question that was semi-work related on the form, but it was something that's, again, to Wes's point, it gives you a starting point to be able to see different unique commonalities, different interests. Oh, I've always wanted to be a pilot, or, hey, you have a collection of silkscreen concert posters. Like, that is cool. Let's what was your favorite concert? This starts to develop these types of kind of woven connection points that might otherwise go unaddressed or undiscovered if we're looking at purely work related context.
Yeah, that's great. I love that. So practically speaking, like work time to just be honest about something that has nothing to do with work. And making intentional opportunities to do that. And you actually, it's funny because you, of course, curiosity, you led to the very next point, which is connection. The next, what have I done? Connection is the next point. And so of our 4 C's, if you will. And so connection, what are some regular ways that leaders, anyone listening who's a leader, can connect with people? Now, we've actually already kind of created a very clear path. Okay, hey, here's one clear thing. But other than that, there's the individual now. How do you connect with the individual? What are ways that you've seen success in helping leaders?
Yeah, one of the ways that leaders can very much connect with an individual, because it really starts with developing relationships with everyone. Mm-hmm. And because if you have maybe on a team of 8, you have 6 great relationships, 2 others that are budding or non-existent, that's going to dramatically challenge your ability to be perceived as a genuine leader. So connection has to exist across the board. And the way that we connect with people is very similar to curiosity, is through a bit of inquiry, through conversation, through not only asking questions, but looking for commonalities amongst individuals. And so to that point of that, I think we probably covered before around, hey, now you see there's different examples of things that are like, hey, I admire this about you, or this is really cool. That's kind of surface level. But if we can divide a deeper connection into individuals' lives, they get to know them. What are the things that motivate them? Why do they get up in the morning? What do they want to be able to accomplish as a result of taking this job? Where do they want to be, not just today, but 3 years into the future? Very much looking for connection points to not only see a person as they are today, but who they can become later on into the future. Yeah. And provide opportunities to connect the work that they're doing to where they want to go. Yeah. And so it's not just about kind of creating connections for people on that human level, but also connecting to the broader future of what can exist as a result of doing the things that you're doing today.
Yeah. That's great, man.
I think connection comes with time in to create the connection. So curiosity is a wonderful segue into that. But if you're not investing the time, you're not really going to connect. I mean, when was the last time that you met somebody in a grocery store and shared, like, oh, I see you're wearing a Dodger hat. I like the Dodgers too. Oh, cool. Curiosity has happened, but the likelihood that if you ran into that person on the street a week later, and all of a sudden you're buddies, maybe not, depends. Right. But it just comes with that time in. And so practically what I would challenge you to do, what I would challenge you to do is I want you to look at your calendar and what it's full of right now. Yeah. And are you prioritizing spending time with your people? Okay. And it can be under the auspices of a work thing. Yeah. Going and job shadowing or going and meeting people where they're at is fantastic, as long as it feels real and you're not just there to accomplish something. You're actually there because I just want to spend some time with you. And there there's going to be varying degrees. There's going to be certain people that will eat that up, and they will take as much as you can give because they like to spend time with people. And if they genuinely are interested in you, like, they will give you the time. And there are certain people that it's, you know, you connect with them once a month and they're fine.
Yeah.
But you will never know that
Unless you do it.
unless you do it, and unless you spend time being very intentional about connecting with your people, which is just time in. So it's a fascinating thing to have leaders go and look at their calendars and say, do I budget and prioritize time for connection with my people? Or is my calendar filled up with moving from one meeting to the next meeting about work stuff? And then if I get around to it, cool, I'll do it. If you're prioritizing work over people, you're prioritizing the wrong thing.
That's good. I mean, I don't know if you could say it more succinctly than that. And I think just as a thought that I had as you guys were both talking, and something you guys had kind of alluded to earlier, connection, I think a lot of time also starts with, based on what I'm hearing you guys say, with that, it's that authentic piece, but it's that vulnerable piece. You know, I think I would be very, you know, it would be very hard for me to connect with someone who A, doesn't feel real, but then two, you know, is someone who's, I don't know, always putting on something, you know, they have to be right all the time. And I think that's something that a lot of leaders do, is that they have to be right.
Well, you're wrong on that.
I know, exactly. But they do, you know, and I think that's something that we as leaders have to approach and ask ourselves, like, hey, it's okay that I'm wrong. As a matter of fact, my experience doesn't make it right or wrong. The times that I've admitted fault have created the most energy in the right direction than almost any other thing I've done as a leader. When I'm like, yeah, sorry guys, I totally missed it. And I think that is such a strong connection piece. I don't know. You have a thought, Marty?
I believe it's not only necessary, but it's something that should be encouraged.
Yeah.
Because doing the wrong thing, yeah, it's not great. We wouldn't want it to do the wrong thing. I don't think anyone wakes up wanting to do the wrong thing. But the idea is that when we do the wrong thing, it's a learning opportunity. Yep. We win or we learn. And particularly as a leader, if you can express, hey, we tried this thing. I may have been responsible for making this decision. You know what? In hindsight or after reflection or based on the result, it wasn't the right thing. You know what? What can we do differently to move things forward, to make things right, to improve the situation? And that is really, it gives agency and it gives opportunity for people to understand we don't have to have this sense, this maybe unspoken expectation of trying to be perfect all the time. We are great. Too. Like, if a baby stopped trying to walk after the first time it fell down, the human species would stop evolving. We would all be little kids, like sitting around, not walking, not developing. And mistakes are a natural outcome of trying to do new things. And so as opposed to harp on people for doing things quote unquote wrong,
right,
let's actually embrace this as something that this is just going to contribute to our growth moving forward.
I love that.
And we're all going to be better because of it.
Yeah. What do you say? We either win or we learn.
Yes. So one other thing that leaders can do is to foster connection within the workplace is, one, calendar. I think that's one of the greatest tools that are oftentimes underutilized within leadership roles. But two is really put a connection question in your meeting agenda. Hey, start off a meeting a little bit kind of what's up, what's new, what's good, but with maybe a specific question that revolves around getting to know people, again, on a more human level. And that way it becomes a part of the process. It's a really great and easy cultural norm where new team members can be integrated. Hey, coming into this meeting, be prepared to do X, Y, or Z. And one of the actually really fun activities can do, to Wes's point around, hey, a little bit of a presentation, you can ask team members, we're going to give you 90 seconds. I want you to pull up 3 pictures from your photo album. We're going to put them on AirPlay, and I want you to share like what's cool about this photo.
Living dangerously.
Whoa.
Yes. But that's, again, that's a little bit like behind the scenes of like your people's lives.
Yeah, like, oh, I didn't know Johnny had, 3 kids.
Yeah.
What?
I think the cool part about that is there's collective connectivity where it's the team needs to be connected. Don't sleep on the one-on-one time. Don't sleep on the need for that, because that in those and to actually be present in that, because it is in those moments where people will give a little bit more of themselves and see what you do with it.
Yeah.
And so being just conscious of that as a leader, of like, if somebody's willing to, they're going to extend like a little bit of that trust olive branch. They're going to extend something out there to see what happens.
Right.
And if it gets ignored, they're going to infer you don't actually care.
Yeah.
If it gets weaponized,
Okay.
they're going to be like, oh, not going to say anything ever again anymore. If you a week from now or a month from now say, hey, remember that thing you shared? I just wanted to check in. How's that going?
Yeah.
You know, oh, you told me that your son or your daughter was having a procedure, or they had a soccer game, or they had a debate thing or a spelling. Like, how'd that go?
How'd it go? Yeah.
You know, one of the coolest practices as a leader is to learn how to internalize strategically, because you can't remember everything, but significant mentions that people will do. They will just toss something out there. Oh, my wife has a big presentation she's giving at work in a couple of weeks.
Log it.
Log it.
Log
it somewhere. Put it somewhere, and then set yourself a follow up. To Marty's point, use the calendar.
Yep.
Follow up with Sam 2 weeks from now about their wife's presentation.
Yeah.
You would be
Shocked.
Amazed at the amount of, when you follow up with something really specific like that, how much of an investment in that relational piggy bank it is. Yeah, it's bananas.
That's just as a silly thing is like, so this was my strategy, was always to set alarms.
Yeah.
Like almost, I'd say 50% of these are relational. Like, text her back, say this thing, do that thing. And honestly, calendar, clock, whatever you have all these resources that you put leverage to be productive.
Unimportant.
Yeah, doesn't matter. But if you can be productive on getting the work done, there's so many tools you can use. Reminders, tools, calendars.
If you could be productive on the work, what's the work of a leader?
Yeah, the people.
It is your people.
Yeah,
so if you want to be productive with your work,
so
you better be calendaring.
Really, and it comes down to intention, which I know that's kind of really, that's something that you talk a lot about, but intentionality, being intentional. So we have 2 more C's. I'm going to kind of glaze over the next one because I think inherently everything we've discussed is the next one, which is care. So we've said curiosity, connection. The next thing is care. Now, I'm sure you guys could lightning round like a few care pieces. Any, like, just right off the top of your head, like, care that we haven't already touched on,
Yeah, there's 3 sub-C's in this. It's really around communication, collaboration, and coaching.
There you go.
So when you want to communicate, it should be dynamic, 2-way, open and honest. When it comes to collaborative, hey, let's work together on this. It's not necessarily something that let's approach this best idea wins. How can we work together to make this better than we could individually? Let's work together.
That's great.
And then coaching, hey, if this worked really well, awesome. Let's lean into that. Let's do more of that. If this didn't work as well as it could, what are some of the feed forwards that we can provide to make this better than it might otherwise be left to its own devices? And that's
great.
Again, that's care in action.
Yeah. That's fantastic. So wait, real quick, you said there's 3 sub-C's, care, but then there's connection, communication, collaboration,
and coaching.
Coaching. Fantastic.
If you don't know a particular, at least a particular goal for each one of your team members, something that they're working towards either personally or professionally, it's a pretty good indicator that you have opportunities to grow in the care thing.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're thinking to yourself right now, let me think about the thing that each one of my team members is working on, and you can't articulate or you don't know.
Right.
And again, this is no shade. I'm not trying to dog on people, because this is a fundamental shift.
It's
in
a
thinking.
shift. Yeah.
This is a shift in thinking. If you don't know, go ask.
Do it.
Curiosity.
This is the first step to get into that care car.
Yeah.
The first step to get into that is to start to ask and to know what it is, what's something special, what is a thing that is driving that person, whether they are looking to get promoted at work or they are looking to start a side business where they want to learn how to basket weave or bake. Like, if you don't know the things that people like, do you really care? I mean, think about relationships with people that really care about you. What's indicative of that? They know the things that you're working towards and are important to you.
Yeah. Well, and you said something, I think it comes back to that thought that you said earlier, is that, like, you don't need to like someone to care for them necessarily. And that's not being callous. That's just being real, because we're all humans.
Well, we're not going to like everybody.
Yeah, no, yeah, exactly. It's impossible. And so I think the last thing, and I think this is the most fun, is celebration.
Send it.
We can do the last thing we can do. And obviously there's a lot of sub C's that we could create, but if we're simplifying it, celebration. So Marty, I feel like this is something that you're really big on. You kind of talk a lot about. Give us the practical ways in which leaders can celebrate their people. Let's go.
First and foremost, actively look for the opportunities, reasons to celebrate.
Yeah.
There's two sides of kind of really helping people feel valued, heard, appreciated, etc. But there's a big difference between working in a place where you feel tolerated versus a place where you feel celebrated. So first and foremost, what are the celebratory things that are worth celebrating in our workplace? And sometimes that can be
identify them.
Yeah. Get very clear. Hey, we want to be able to celebrate milestones. Like if this person either successfully completed a certification or went through training. Awesome. That might be something to celebrate. It might be service anniversaries. This person's been here 1, 2, 5, however many years. But let's also, if you choose, you can celebrate their birthdays. It's really amazing. This is an option. It's not necessarily, this is not a requirement. This is definitely, it's more about the type of culture you want to build. Yeah. But I had a little bit of pushback about this with working with somebody. And I just shared a story. I had a team member at Advantage where we had a culture of celebrating individuals' birthdays, made them the special dessert that they want. And this gal came into my office afterwards with the card, the team signed it, and she was in tears. She's like, this is the first time after my parents have passed that anyone celebrated my birthday in the last 6 years.
Wow. Yeah.
Her friends, anyone else, it was something that she's like, I didn't know if I'd ever have another birthday celebration. And so ever from that moment, I'm like, it is important.
It's on. Yeah.
It's on.
We're doing it.
In addition, not only looking at birthdays, but maybe life milestones, events. These, again, it's up to your discretion as a leader, but as a leader, you get that opportunity. And you can, yes, it's going to take time and energy to do, but the relational return, not to say it's disingenuous, hey, you want to get the most out of you because do these things, not necessarily from a manipulative standpoint, but from a standpoint, again, to make somebody feel honored and appreciated and celebrated. And that's going to feel much better to go to a workplace, knowing that these people not only know me, they care about me, they also celebrate me.
Yeah.
And that, I'm going to be a happier person as a result.
Well, and I think you kind of mentioned there's, celebration. It's like there's kind of baked in things that we societally choose to celebrate. So it's like, okay, easy. Birthdays, anniversaries, like find anniversaries and log them again in a calendar.
Yeah.
Put them in your calendar and make it a thing that someone's watching or doing, or
And it's not also just to celebrate the individual, but the opportunity to celebrate the team as a whole. So if, say, I'm a big believer of quarterly initiatives. Say this next quarter we're going to aim to do this. Yeah. As you work towards and accomplish that goal, let's celebrate it with a clear, hey, if we reach this milestone or we reach this or complete this with this level of success, we're going to celebrate in a particular way.
That's great.
And this also aligns really well with being able to give people not only a clear middle point reference or middle distance reference point of what to work towards, but also gives them an opportunity to see what's in for them.
Yeah.
Why do I want to give my extra energy and effort to do this?
Yeah.
And one of the most addictive drugs within an organization is momentum. And so if you can celebrate the progress and the success that has occurred, it feels really great to have this experience. I'm going to want more of that.
Yeah.
And that's a great opportunity to pull people together to work collectively. So it really feeds multiple birds with one stone.
I love it. I love it.
I mean, it does kind of go back to systemize it.
Yeah.
What are the things that as a culture we celebrate here?
Yeah.
Yes.
We celebrate birthdays. We celebrate anniversaries. We celebrate significant lifestyles. Somebody graduates college, gets a new degree, has a child, adopts a child, whatever. Those are things that, hey, we as a group, we're going to come together and celebrate. My encouragement on the work front is to prioritize and plan it the same way you plan everything else.
Yeah.
So when you're doing your work breakdown sessions, when you're looking and saying, we want to accomplish this goal, what are our key milestones? Just ask one more question. Hey, when we hit this milestone, significant or not, How do we want to celebrate that?
Yeah.
What is a pizza party? Bump
Yeah,
off an hour early,
yeah.
go to happy hour. What, we're going to just team high five again,
Right.
whatever. This is where the culture haters will come in and say, oh, it's all about pizza parties and high fives. Like, sure, if that's what you want.
Right.
But people by nature like to bookend things. We by nature like to have closure. And too often work feels like that never ending hamster wheel of just more stuff I've got to work on. If you want to remedy that, if you want to remedy burnout, start to celebrate things when we make accomplishments. But you got to plan it and prioritize it and weight it equally as you do with everything else.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, it's the difference between something happening by design or default, and so with intention, you can do all these things. And yeah, maybe it's pizza parties. Who cares? People love pizza. Honestly, like I love pizza. Like, so do pizza if that's your thing.
Yeah.
And so, all right. So we've kind of talked and dove in a lot into leadership. And so let's just do let's bring it all together. So we kind of have the 4 C's.
Bring it down.
The 4 C's. We have curiosity. Hey, ask the questions. Be curious. What does Ted Lasso say? Like, he literally says, like, I can't remember what he says. He literally says, be curious, right? That's his expression.
Oh, I think it's Emerson, but
well, yeah, I can't.
As expressed by Ted Lasso, but the idea to
be curious. Ask the questions. Don't lead with assumption. Lead with a question. And then the next thing is connection. Right there we go. Communication. It's care. Be intentional. Be thoughtful in how you care for your people. Which kind of leads to the next thing is connecting with people. Be intentional. Put it on the calendar. Do it. And then, of course, celebration is the last C inside of our multi-C effort of C's.
Well, we already gave out F's. Now we're giving out C's.
Now we're giving out C's. We're
going to work through the whole alphabet.
That's a great idea, actually. Just to say we did it.
Yeah.
What were you going to say, bud?
No, just to I was just recapping just the curiosity, connection, care, celebration, and look for opportunities and consider if you're looking back today, what are some of the things that you've done to demonstrate curiosity with your team? What are some things that you can or have done to connect with individuals or teams as a whole? Yeah. What have you done to demonstrate care to your team, to individuals and your team? And what have you done to celebrate individuals and your team?
It's great.
Just open-ended. Ask yourself that a little bit.
Write it down.
Audit, and that will give you a nice way to either assess what you're doing well and that you want to continue, or maybe there might be some room for growth.
Yeah. And I think kind of back to that, systemize it. Just make it a part of your rhythm that you do this, because it will be better. Yeah. Everything will be better because of it.
That should be your work.
Yeah.
A person in leadership's work centers and revolves around the people who are in their charge. Yeah. And so, if I'm leaving a person with kind of one piece of closing, easy for me to say, closing advice, it's to understand that you are in a place of real responsibility and the potential for real impact. And to understand that your job as a leader of a team is not to get results and outcomes. That's your team. Your job as a leader is to make sure they have the things that they need to be successful, not just in work, but in life. That's why they're working, is to be successful in life. They're not working to make your company successful.
It's great.
So if you want them to be successful and you want your company to be successful, invest some time, effort, and energy in making them successful, and watch what happens.
Watch it.
Because when you make people's lives better, your business grows in direct proportion.
Better,
that almost sounds. People. Yeah, I was say that kind of sounds like a familiar. sounds familiar.
Sounds familiar.
I love that. I think that's a great way to wrap it. At the end of the day, start with yourself. Be curious, and then the rest will kind of follow. Ask those questions. And so, hey, episode 4, baby, we did it. We're here.
High 4.
Leadership high 4. Well, hey, we got to say always go to our website, culturestoke.com. Get the free culture calculator. it's a great resource that really just helps. Wes is he's doing my thing. It'll help you. I promise you. It's free. It's a gift. All we need is your email. We promise we won't spam you, but we will give you that free gift. Something that we developed, and it's really great. A great starting conversational piece. Yeah. And then Wes so eloquently pointed to this. We are going to continue to have these conversations, but we want to start answering the questions that you're asking. And so start submitting them on we're going to be, putting our question or our videos up on Instagram and YouTube and podcasts on Spotify, everywhere. So if there's a place that you can comment on our content, ask a question. And we promise it's going to go in here. And at some point, maybe not right away, but we will answer it to the best of our ability. Or we won't if we don't know the answer.
Hey, but you know what? As real leaders, if we don't know, we'll be totally cool saying, I have no idea.
We don't know.
We don't know.
Yeah. So, hey, as we always say, Culture Stoke, happier people.
Better results.
Love it.
And
see you guys.
Lastly, I just want to say happy birthday, Leah.
Yes. Leah, she is our COO, and she is the best.
The best.
Yes. She's the best.
She has a very special birthday today, and thank you for making our lives significantly better, not only in addition to our company, but the fact that you are so committed and so excited about the work that is happening here at Culture Stoke gives us the energy, the enthusiasm to lean into the areas where it feels uncomfortable, knowing that good things are coming.
Yeah. She's a celebration queen, and she's so good at it. Reminds us all.
Legit our hype person.
Yeah, dude.
Like,
Totally.
legit our hype person.
I love it.
So good.
We love you, Leah.
Love you,
Culture
Leah.
Stoke.
Thank you.
Happy birthday.
Thanks for listening to the Culture Stoke podcast. If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to like, subscribe, and rate us wherever you tune in. Share this episode with anybody who could use a culture boost, and visit culturestoke.com to grab your free culture calculator. Until next time, keep stoking the fire.